already. So getting started on tying this fly, we're going to take a strip of black rabbit zonker, and we're going to measure out just about an inch long chunk here. It's going to be just about right there. I'm going to take that and cut that flush, and from here, once we've got that rabbit zonker, if we see this leather piece right in here, we're gonna go ahead and just taper a V into that leather. And it doesn't have to be a really tight V either. It can be just a nice, easy taper going down into the tail. Nothing crazy, just enough to kind of minimize some of that extra rabbit hair from those top corners. So once we get that done, we can go ahead and set this small chunk of rabbit strip aside. And just to get prepped up for the rest of this pattern here, we're gonna go ahead and take another chunk of that rabbit zonker strip here, and we need about 1.5 inches or so. So we'll go ahead and chop that zonker, and from here we're going to take that zonker strip. A couple different ways you can go about this. The easiest and simplest is probably to take loon little CDC clamp, dubbin tool here, go ahead and pinch all of that rabbit fur. See if we can get into focus right off of that leather strip there. So if you want to take a pair of longer scissors rather than your short pointy scissors, wherever they get in focus here, go ahead and take our longer scissors, and we're just going to go ahead and cut that as close, I'm going to flip this over, as close to the zonker leather as we can, and that'll leave us a bunch of nice clean rabbit hair, easily accessible. So go ahead, you can just toss that little piece of leather, not a problem there. We're also going to save off any of the excess rabbit fur from earlier. So go ahead, make a little pile of it. Doesn't have to be super neat right now. And the next step of just getting this dubbin set up, we're gonna take some ice dub olive brown and then some ice dub red. And we're just gonna take a small pinch of both of these. So I like to just pinch the top of the bag here and then just pull. That keeps the fiber straight. And that's a good chunk. Doesn't need to be much on the red. The olive brown will take a little bit more of that ice dub out. And we're just gonna go ahead and place that right on top of our nice little bit of rabbit there. So from here, once we have that all mashed together, we're just gonna fold that rabbit over the top of, there we go, now we're in focus. We're just gonna go ahead and fold that rabbit on top of our ice dub. We're going to start to just pull and pluck this until it sits all together nicely. Now, if you're gonna be tying a few of these, you can just take like a 10, 12 inch rabbit zonker and much bigger chunks of ice dub and blend it all together by hand like this before you go ahead and tie all your flies, but we're just tying a single one here. So trying to get a good chunk that'll cover our body and end up making the head of our fly as well. So I really like blending the dubbin like this rather than using a blender, really because it just goes ahead and doesn't chop up all of those rabbit fibers. If you use a blender, like a coffee grinder or something like that, it'll chop everything up into finer bits, and we're really trying to get that length out of these fibers. So next couple of materials we're gonna need, I really love these Umpqua X series all-purpose hooks, really designed for like bonefish fishing, but they're great for trout. These have been a go-to lately. And then we're also gonna take some i-Ballz black nickel with the green eyes. These dumbbell eyes are made out of brass, not lead. Make a little bit slimmer profile too, so don't make the flies sink as much or as fast. And I think that's a real big piece out of this fly here. So let's get on to tie-in. Alrighty, so getting started with this fly, we're gonna use some Vevus 6/0 thread just to get started. I will be changing over threads over to Semperfli Nano Silk. I really like that stuff for everything except for attaching dumbbell eyes onto a hook. It's just super slick and dumbbell eyes like to spin around on it. So go ahead and start our thread. We're gonna take our i-Ballz dumbbell eyes and go ahead and get those seated just about an eye length away from the eye of our hook here. So I like to take 3-4 wraps of thread and then spin those over to the bottom. It's a little easier way to get those started. And then we'll just take some cross wraps of thread and get those i-Ballz started onto the hook here. So next step of this pattern, we're gonna go ahead and just drop a little dab super glue right on top of that eyeball. Alrighty, so we just got that drop of super glue on top of our i-Ballz here. So we're gonna take 2-3 more X wraps, and then we're gonna start doing like a parachute post wrap around the base of our eyes here. That's gonna help cinch everything down and just get some super glue into the crevices. Once we've done that, take a few thread turns back, and then we'll bring those back up to the eye. That just helps secure everything. And then we can go ahead and whip finish. Really goofy with the camera here, apologize. Whip finish that thread tight and just snip that thread off. Once we've got that done, we're gonna go ahead and tie in some 100 denier Semperfli Nano Silk. This stuff is literally the best for everything except tying on dumbbell eyes. So go ahead, get that started, locked into place. Cut that off, that tag off. We're gonna go ahead and tie in 4 strands of olive crystal flash. If you'd like, you can substitute that olive out for chartreuse. That works really well with this pattern, or with the black coloration of this as well. But just take 4 strands. I'm gonna go ahead and tie those in, and we're just gonna go down to the bend of the hook here. So once we've got that down at the bend, we're gonna take about the same length of our rabbit zonker that we cut earlier, trim those tight, set the rest off to the side to save for later. And we're gonna take our about 1 inch long rabbit zonker that we pre-cut earlier. I'm gonna go ahead and secure that to the tail of our fly here. What I really like about this Semperfli Nano Silk is it bites down and you can really cinch hard on things, and it hardly ever breaks. The only time it does really break is if it gets caught on an edge of a sharp tungsten bead, but otherwise it's pretty darn solid stuff. So next step of this pattern, we're gonna go ahead and create a dubbin loop here. And I might actually have to stand up for this with the camera so close here. But we're just gonna tie in, make a loop And then we're going to take our dubbin twister, little shepherd's crook here, and we're going to go in and put in all of that dubbin that we kind of blended up earlier. So one thing I like to do before I put that in the loop is to just pluck them one more time, make sure all the fibers are straightened out. And we'll put that dubbin into that loop. So from here, I'm just gonna go ahead and spread that out just a little bit. Get a nice long noodle going. We're gonna see if I can do this upside down and backwards. Not quite. But we'll just go ahead and spin up that dubbin noodle. And I like a heavier brush for this just because the ice dub tends to get a little bit more trapped with the rabbit fur in there. But we're gonna go ahead and brush all of that rabbit fur out, just like you would do if you're modifying a slump buster with a dubbin loop. And once you get that loop tied up, I'm just gonna bring our thread up to the eye of the hook. And if you're using a rotary feature, you can go ahead and grab your bobbin cradle, tuck your thread in that bobbin cradle, and I like to take a couple turns backwards and then start wrapping this brush forwards. Go ahead and preen some of this by hand while you're moving that forward. And that'll just keep those fibers from getting as trapped throughout this process. One thing that I do really like to do is give 2 extra wraps of that brush right behind the eyes. Then we'll go ahead and wrap once behind, once over, and then we're just gonna finish off the rest of the fly up here at the eye. And it gives kind of a goofy look at first, but when we finish this off, it's pretty dang solid. So once you get that wrapped up to the eye, we're just gonna go ahead and tie that off. And again, excuse me for the awkward hand placement. It is a bit of a struggle with my iPhone, like 3 inches away from the fly here. So once we get that secured, we're gonna go ahead and chop that little last bit off. And then we will whip finish the head here. And when I'm whip finishing, I like to do a 3-turn whip finish or a 5-turn whip finish and then a 3-turn whip finish. I think that extra 3-turn just gives a little bit more durability, and if one of your whip finishes breaks, you're not bound to kill your fly right off the bat here. So go ahead and get that cinched tight, trim off that tag, and then you can take your brush, just brush all that dubbin and all that rabbit fur out, and then we will preen that all back into the tail, which is for some reason kind of twisted on me. There we go. Alrighty. So that is our finished little streamer here. But I really like how that long ice stub red flows into the rabbit fur, and then that olive brown ice stub just really gives this fly a lot of life. So enjoy, have fun, go catch some big fish with it. See you later. Tight lines.